All right, welcome to our Controls Engineering Lab in Blue 60 here at Dunwoody College Technology. And what I'm going to explain in here is some of our lab rules, which include safety rules associated with this lab. This is one of the few labs where we do allow students to work outside of normal lab hours, unlike the robot lab or the electricity lab. However, they must check in and out with a faculty member prior to performing any work in this lab. This door, like many of the other doors, tends to remain locked. And so a student can come find one of us in the office, we can come unlock it, and then we know that that student's working. And then if we have to leave or if nobody's going to be around, they would have to stop working at that point. Number two, no changes to I/O are authorized in this lab. So unlike our PLC lab across the hall, in this lab everything is pre-wired. So from a controls engineering standpoint, we are not, this is not a lab where we practice wiring. This is a lab where we practice add-on profiles and motion instructions and machine vision. And so because of that, we want to keep our I/O the same at all 24 stations. Number three here, the Emerson process controls are to remain locked out when not in use. So you'll notice that there is a disconnect on the side of our control panel over here. And so the control panel should be locked out anytime the system's not being used. Doesn't mean that it can't be undone and brought back online, but it should be locked out anytime it's not being used. Number four, all PLC stations are to be de-energized at the circuit breaker when not in use. What that means is the isolation for every single one of these PLCs is this breaker right here. Again, we don't do any wiring, but this is how I would turn on my station if I was going to go to use it. And this is also how I would de-energize my station. So even if I'm going to take a break, I need to shut this off before I go out of the room and take a break. Number five here, all Ethernet cables should be stored in designated locations. So you'll see all the orange Ethernet cables stored on these hooks on the wall. Number six, loose hair, clothing, and jewelry should be secured or removed prior to operating any motor controls. So this really deals with our AC/DC servo class. You'll see that we do have servo motors, and we do have some three-phase motors that operate either on a VFD or a servo drive. So prior to working on that, we would have students take off their lanyards. If they had long hair, we'd have them pull it back. Or if they had any loose clothing, hoodies, strings, something like that, we want to make sure prior to working in that version of the lab, we want to make sure that they have secured that stuff. Number seven and number eight is very similar to the other labs here. Number seven is all beverages must be contained in a spill-proof container. And then number eight is that troubleshooting, again, always begins with a multimeter, and we expect students to carry a multimeter with them to and from class. That's our controls engineering lab.